Well, good morning. It has been a while since I posted a video, and I've been promising some of you the recipe for the pecan cobbler. So this morning is Tuesday, September the 28th, and it's fall, finally, my favorite time of year. It's a little bit cool this morning and going to warm up this afternoon, so it's the perfect day to make a fall dessert. So let's get started. Alright, let's get started. I've got our oven preheating to 350 degrees, and while it's preheating, I'm going to melt the butter that we're going to need for the recipe. I'm just using a disposable aluminum pan because I'm going to be giving most of this cobbler away. So in the pan, I'm putting 6 tablespoons of butter. Now, you know, 1 stick of butter has 8 tablespoons, so this is just going to be 6 tablespoons of that stick. I'm going to stick that in there and let it start preheating. All right, now, let's get you in a little bit closer here where you can see what I'm doing. Now, the batter for this cobbler is going to be 1.5 cups of self-rising flour. It's very important that it's self-rising. And mine was down towards the end of the bag, and it was a little lumpy, so I'm going to sift it a little bit. All right, so there's 1.5 cups of self-rising flour. And you cannot cook with flour without making a mess. Now, this also calls for 1.5 cups of regular granulated sugar. So there's 1.5. And this is extremely important. Mix your flour and sugar together really well before you put the milk in, because if you don't, it'll lump. So I'm going to mix that flour and sugar together. The sugar kind of acts like sandpaper with that flour, and it mixes it all together so that it doesn't make lumps when you put the milk in. All right, I think that's probably good enough. Our sugar's a little lumpy too. Okay, now this is 2/3 of a cup of just regular whole milk. We're going to pour that in. This is going to make a really thick batter. And this is the reason I use a whisk, because it would be really hard to get all that combined in this thick of a batter without a whisk. All right, see how thick that is? Okay, let me see if our butter's melted. All right, our butter is melted in the pan, and this aluminum pan will cool off quickly. But there's our 6 tablespoons of butter. Now, at this point, you want to measure out 1 cup of pecans, and I found that you can use a few more pecans than that if you want to. It really doesn't matter, and I like a lot of pecans in mine. But I'm just going to measure out 1 cup of just pecan pieces, and you sprinkle that over that melted butter. Try to get them distributed equally so that each bite gets some pecans in it. All right, now at this point, we're going to pour over our batter. So I have switched from a whisk to a silicone spatula so we can get every little bit of that batter out of the bowl. So what we're going to do is just drizzle it over like that so we get it all over the pan. And at this point, if it's not mixed really well in the bottom, just go ahead and mix it up. But be sure and get every bit of that batter out. Okay. Now you don't mix this together. You just kind of spread it over top of the butter and the pecans. In fact, you don't mix any of this recipe. You just layer it on top. Now this is, oh, I did forget one thing. I was supposed to put a little bit of vanilla in that batter, so I'm just going to sprinkle just a little bit on top. All right. And just kind of spread it. That'll work fine. And when you're baking, use a good vanilla. That imitation stuff might smell like vanilla, but it doesn't taste like vanilla. This is actually a homemade vanilla that I made using real vanilla beans, and I soaked it in vodka for about 6 weeks, and then I strained it off. It is so good. All right, so to recap, we melted 6 tablespoons of butter in the pan while we preheated the oven to 350. Then in this bowl, we mixed 1.5 cups of self-rising flour, 1.5 cups of granulated sugar, and 2/3 of a cup of milk. We sprinkled 1 cup of pecans over the melted butter, and then we added our batter on top. Now, this is brown sugar. This is 1.5 cups of brown sugar. And when you measure brown sugar, be sure and pack it down when you measure it, because it has molasses in it, which makes it a different texture than granulated sugar, and it won't measure right if you don't pack it down. So I'm just going to use my hands. I'm going to sprinkle 1.5 cups of sugar over top of this. All right. Now, the last step in this is going to seem really odd. It's 1.5 cups of boiling water. And I don't know why it has to be boiling water. My guess is that it will, when you pour that boiling water over it, it's kind of going to make that batter start rising immediately and maybe even crisp it up a little bit. So, I've got my little kettle over here, and I'm going to heat up 1.5 cups of water in my kettle. And when it comes to a boil, we'll be back. All right, my water is boiling. I just heard my little kettle click off. So we're going to take this steaming, boiling water and measure out 1.5 cups. And all you do is just pour it over this cobbler. It's so simple. Bless you. You don't stir it. You just leave it like that. And now we're going to stick it in the oven, which has been preheated to 350 degrees. And let it bake 30 to 35 minutes. And when it comes out, it's going to be ooey and gooey, and I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, I checked our cobbler at 30 minutes, and I decided it wasn't quite brown enough, so I stuck it back in there for 5 more minutes. So the complete cooking time was 35 minutes at 350 degrees. And I hope you can see this. Let me grab my hot pads. It's been out of the oven about 5 minutes, and look at that. Now I'm going to dip a little piece out so that you can see it, but honestly it's better if you wait about 10 minutes or so to dip these servings out, because when you first take it out, the syrupy mixture in it is kind of runny, but if you wait about 10 minutes, it thickens up, and oh my goodness, it is thicker and syrupy, and look at that. That just screams for vanilla ice cream. So I'm going to take 2 servings of this out, one for me and one for Eddie. I made this cobbler for a friend of mine named Adam, and oh my goodness, guys, my kitchen smells so good. I mean, pecans and butter and brown sugar. How can it get any more fall than that? So there is the pecan cobbler, and I hope you'll try this recipe. It's really simple. So let me know if you try it and how you like it. You guys have a great fall day.